Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mob Psycho 100, Season 3, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, we had that beginning where with Mob meeting up with Masato and being like, oh, like, why'd you, you never showed up to our meeting. She's like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about it. But she's like, you don't have to worry about the Psycho Helmet stuff anymore because the true founder showed up. I was like, okay. And then we find out about Tomei later on. It's like, oh, she's like, oh yeah, I completely forgot. He was like, was it all about he was like, is it about the divine tree? She's like, yeah, how'd you know? She's like, some founder, like some group people showed up and kind of whisked me up into it. And she's like, hey guys, we're no longer the telepathy club. We're all about the divine tree now. We're going to pray like a couple times a day. And it's like, if you pray for like 5 minutes a day, you'll get a blessing. And the rest of the club is like, what? You're like, interesting. And I love that they set this up early on in the episode that when you have Tsuruki eating a cookie or whatever, because you see that people are passing out stuff, whether it's like cookies, candy, or teas, like stuff from the divine trees being mixed in, and it's like a mass hypnosis brainwashing. And we saw that. I was like, oh, is Teru not going to be affected? But he was. I was like, oh snap. But luckily he was able to push through it. He was like, whoa, this is brainwashing. I know what's going on here. I thought that was so fascinating. Because first and foremost, because the reason why I said that it sets the stage, it means like literally no one is safe. Because at first you're thinking like, well, maybe anyone that's a psychic like Teru won't be affected. But it's like even Teru is affected. Which kind of brings back something and obviously fits thematically and everything. And that's kind of the whole point. Going back to episode 3 of the show, where, not of season 1, where Dimple mind brainwashed everyone, right? But he couldn't brainwash Mob. Now the question is, and we never got confirmation on this because the only psychic he faced at that time was Mob. Would Teru have been affected by like what he was doing back then? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe all psychics would be immune to it. Or so that's something we'll never really know. Like, could Dimple have like maybe weaker psychics he could have like controlled, but not Mob? Would Teru have been affected? But it could also just be a thing of like, no, it's just like this fake Psycho Helmet founder is so powerful that even if Teru and them wouldn't be affected by Dimple in the past, they would be affected now. So that's a really interesting thing of just showing you how powerful he's gotten, because I think that would even imply like, yo, maybe even Mob wouldn't be 100% safe. But to be fair, Mob is a very unique case amongst all the psychics because of his like fractured self of just how he like bottles everything up. Like his situation might be like the deciding factor would make it so that no matter how powerful this brainwashing is, he would never be affected. So that's something to kind of be considered, because Mob and Regan had met up, and it's like Mob is talking about, well, Regan talks to Mob about, right, this religion thing, it's got millions of views and stuff like that. And it's like, especially the moment he revealed his psychic powers, people were like all about it. But he's like, well, we'll have to focus on something else. And it's like, obviously going back to like was that last episode or was that episode before last? They were it might have been last episode where we were talking about the roots popping up all over the place and Regan wanted nothing to do with it. But now it's like, right, there's a lot of property damage and stuff. The roots are kind of everywhere. And obviously it goes back to the broccoli. So he wants to destroy it. And it's like, it's not even because he's like, yeah, I don't want all these jobs. We'd have to deal with plants. And Mom's kind of like, why not? It's like, he's like, we're not going to really get paid much for it. But it's like, this is kind of our responsibility because we were at the epicenter of the broccoli popping up. So we have to destroy it. And I love his grand plan is, all right, Mob, you're going to use your psychic powers to uproot that thing. You're going to carry it off and throw it in the water. But I'm like, I mean, I guess like, I was like, wouldn't that help it more? But I'm like, you're also asking Mob to uplift something that massive. So, and I love Mob's like, oh, it seems like that's a lot of work for me to do. Like, it seems like I'm going to kind of be doing everything. But Regan's like, no, I'm going to direct you in what direction to go. It's like, okay. So they end up picking up Risu, asking for his help. And he's super reluctant to do all this. He's like, do we really have to? But Regan's like, come on, like, the city could be in danger. He talked about his mom's like, my mom planted a watermelon. And now, like, all the other plants around are getting sucked up and killed and stuff, which we saw that with Plant Dude from Claw. He, just like a lot of, at least, well, we don't know where every other member of like the Ultimate Five ended up. Maybe we'll find out later on, but he's one of them, and we see he's got a regular job, just like we saw with the Scars from Division 7, were like all getting their own jobs, have their own plans of what they're going to do. So I thought he was going to be a crucial part of this episode. Not really, because he starts noticing the plant situation and he tries to touch the plant, but instead of like trying to kill it, because it's affecting all plant life in the city, and he's like, yo, it's feeding off everything. So he's like, right, let me like nip this in the bud. But we see him getting affected, so I think some of his life force was drained away, maybe in retaliation. But we also have Teru showing up trying to attack the broccoli itself. He gets deflected because there's a giant barrier around it, and he gets sucked in but fights his way out. I love that he did the tie sword thing, where he makes his tie into a sword. I had just mentioned that like in episode 2 when Serizawa had done his thing. I was like, yo, Teru hasn't done that since his fight with Mob, and lo and behold, literally 2 episodes later, they're doing it. I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice touch. But he faces off against the fake Mob, and he's still able to like brainwash Teru for a second, being like, I am God. He's like, right, faith, belief in the Psycho helmets. But luckily Teru was able to break through it again, and it's like, no, not only once but twice you've brainwashed me now. And they duke it out. I mean, it was kind of a one-sided fight from the little we saw, where like Teru like sliced and diced him, but then he was able to regenerate himself. And I guess it seems like it wasn't until he said Teru's name that Teru was like, oh, it is definitely you, Dimple. Like I said, I went both ways on it, being like either Dimple was responsible for this or it's going to seem like he is. And because he was like, oh, you were an evil spirit regardless. Like, that's all you are. You aren't some psychic. This isn't a real person. At the end of the day, you're just some evil, worthless evil spirit doing all this. And it's like, yeah, it ended up being Dimple. Like I said, I went both ways on it. Could be either or. Obviously, those are the only choices. But I was definitely leaning more towards thinking, like, it's not Dimple. It's going to be someone else. But it's like, no, it is Dimple. For him, it's like, I think, once again, everything is kind of slipping out of his hands. He had his machinations and stuff, but that became less and less important. But now he's, like, back. Because I think for him, it's like, that's his goal in life. Just like Mob. Mob had his goal where it's just like, I want to build up courage. I want to become more and more of a person so that I can ask Tsubomi out. And so, it's like Mob is growing as a person. And I think for Dimple, it's like, right, I've kind of put my life on pause for all this. It's like, this is all cute and whatever, but it's like, I have my goal. I want it to be a god, and I let that slip away. And it's like, no, I'm going to take this opportunity to do it. And I think it wasn't just Mob who was getting overconfident, so was Dimple. And it's just like, right, I'm going to do this. And he says, like, I don't need Shigeo anymore. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become a god. And, looking at it like, hey, I'm uniting all these people. We're under this beautiful, like, I'm making people peaceful and stuff. So, like, I'm doing good. Trying to justify all that he's doing. Stripping away people of their free will. But, sadly, the group is on their way to deal with the broccoli situation, but Risu gets infected because you're like, oh, please don't. And he eats the candy. You're like, shit. Because he got it from the student council, which not like 80% of the student council was affected. The only people that seemed to not be infected was Risu and like the vice president. The president as well as the other student council members were infected, showing like, right, this is spreading around like a plague, like a brainwashing virus. And so Risu leads them to like a place to where other members are, and it's like, wait, how did Risu contact them? It's like they're a giant hive mind. Because early in the episode, Mom was like, oh, I feel like we're being watched, and Regan's like, oh, I get it, you got more popular. He's like, but you really don't want to talk about that, because he's like, you're basically, he didn't want Mob to get overconfident. But it's like, no, they are legitimately being watched, because literally everyone in his city, I don't know if the plants work like or the roots work like this too, but at least every person in this city is eyes and ears for Dimple. And now it's like, they have to run, because it's like, right, they can't, because Regan figures it out. It's like the candy, the drinks, the cookies. He realizes by the time they run away, it's like Risu has been infected. He's been brainwashed. We can't like get rid of this candy and stuff. And then realizing, all these people around being like, oh, you're trying to destroy the broccoli. Like everyone is the eyes and ears, so they're trying to run further and further away. I also love that Mob tried to take off his jacket, but he's still wearing the same shirt that he got from Terror last episode. And Regan's like, whoa, why are you taking it? He's like, I was getting hot, like running in his jacket. He's like, no, put it back on. That your jacket has higher defense points or something. I'm trying to make an excuse because it's like, that shirt is fugly as hell. Put your jacket back on. But it's like, yeah, what do we do? Like when it feels like the entire city is against him, but on their way there, lo and behold, what happens? Regan gets infected. He didn't eat anything, he didn't drink anything, but I guess like maybe the closer proximity they got to the broccoli, the more like the brainwashing waves are coming off of it, infecting him. That's the thing. He didn't eat or drink anything, and he was with Mob the entire time, but like I guess even like eventually like it's spreading so wild, like a wildfire, and being so powerful that even he, like, I thought it was going to end up maybe being a situation of somehow Regan, being who he is, just somehow had some mental fortitude that prevented him from being brainwashed. But he is, because he's like, oh, do you think the Psycho Helmet people are bad people? And Mob was like, no, I don't think they are. And I was like, the fact is, he's bringing this up. Now, I don't know if this is like a lesson he's trying to teach Mob, or he's been brainwashed. We find out pretty quickly he's been brainwashed. But Mob is saying, like, initially, it's like this was a gathering of people. Yeah, they had something they were following, but it was like nothing harmful. It just brought people together. But the problem is now whoever this fake is leading this group of people and manipulating them. That's where the lines cross. When people are like looking for their founder, they found something to believe in. I mean, that's something beautiful. Like, that's the thing about fake. You don't have to like believe in any religion, and you can respect someone's faith. You might not always agree with like their perspective on things, but faith being something important to people, it brought a community of people together. That's beautiful. That's dope, and Mom's all about that. But especially as someone who luckily has had a situation where he's had so many people around him, like I think it's meant to be this parallel between like the Psycho Helmet religion and Mom. I mean, well, obviously there's a direct correlation, but more so like in his personal life, how he's got more people around him and had more friends, and so he's all about like building a community around yourself and having people in your lives and the connections that get formed and made. He's all about that, but the problem is like he doesn't like it being a manipulation along the way, which Regan's like, oh, are you saying that because this person's a fake? But this place had no true like founder. Were you gonna step up? And Mom was like, no, like I'm not the true founder either. But he's like, okay then, like Regan tried to put it as a perspective of, yeah, this is like a club, and a club needs a leader, a club president to kind of dictate, some of the things that he's like, right, it's not evil, it's just, hey, the leader's most likely just telling this club like some activities they should do and stuff. He's like, so let's go home, let's forget all about this. But Regan's like, Mob is like, you've been brainwashed, haven't you? And he's like, oh, so this is what it's like to be falsely accused. And then Regan pointed his finger, and it's the exact same thing Masato did, Tomei did, as well as Risu. And it's like, oh, and Mob grabs his chest, because it's like the people that he cares about most around him, like the people, his friends and stuff, are being infected, and he goes off on his own, and it's just like, right, I might be the only person left in the city not infected. So he goes to the broccoli, and he's like, I'm going to talk to the leader of all of this. And Masato's there, and she's like, all right, let him through. And then like everyone's there. We even see like the Body Improvement Club is there. Obviously, we met Judo earlier in the episode, and he was infected, obviously, because he was at the epicenter when this all popped off. But we also see Tsubomi there as well. So, and it's interesting too, because you're like, because it's the thing is interesting because like people there being like, oh my god, the original Psycho Helmet is here, lo and behold. And then some people are like, oh, we got 2 Psycho Helmets. So it's like, how many of those people at the broccoli are being affected? Maybe like seeing Mob kind of shifted their vision of their Psycho Helmet leader, that being Dimple. Like maybe like it finally shifted their perspective to be like, oh no, like, because their minds are warped to follow the leader. And that's what, like, because it's even something Dimple had said to Teru. It's like, yo, I cannot be seen in my spirit form by regular people, so I needed a body that fit the form of what people expected the founder to look like. But I guess because that image is burned in their mind, when they see Mob and he looks just like, oh, their fake founder, it's like, oh my god, it's him. So their mind is kind of split between like, oh my god, there's 2 founders. Like the brainwashing kind of had this adverse effect of them also believing and following Mob as well. So next episode is going to be the Clash, which is going to be interesting, especially considering like well, he's brainwashed like the entire city, and the last person he was fighting was Teru, and he probably eventually wore Teru down. So a lot of psychics at his disposal. We know Risu's under his control, probably is Teru, so he could easily use them to fight against Mob. He might even, he kowtowed to like Mob previous because he's like, oh, Mob's so powerful, but now it's like no. There's so many interesting parallels too, because it's like, remember when Dimple was possessing Risu, was like, yo, let's not fight Mob, but then Risu was all about like, I'm gonna fight Mob. So there's like a lot of connective tissue you can draw parallels to and think about in this moment. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out next episode, what that conversation is going to be like, and what the end result's going to be. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.